what the Lord did at the beginning is he demonstrates his strength and his power. He rips the ocean in half. He drowns Pharaoh. He's doing all the, at the front end of trying to woo the woman, you're strutting. Later, you're saying, and I can provide for you too. He does all the quail and manna and water, and he's like, I'm not just he's wooing Israel away from the false gods. If we're Christians, and this is the reality, biblically speaking, our entire faith system, all of our hope, everything hinges on the fact that we believe that someday God is going to come back from heaven in blazing fire. He's going to rip the sky open with an army of angels in the form of a anthropomorphic Jewish man to engage in a hostile takeover of the earth and save us. Pretty crazy stuff to believe. But so also is the fact that he ripped the ocean in half. And so that's what he's saying is he goes, remember this so that you'll have faith for this stuff. The prophets are pointing both back and forward. And so again, I just say, look at that coincidence. What a coincidence. What a coincidence that the mountain that the Jews in the first century during the time of Jesus and Paul believed was the real Mount Sinai, that it also just happens to have an altar, just like the Bible describes at the base. It just so happens to have the pillars, just like the Bible describes. And it matches the biblical criteria. It is going to be the single greatest, transition in the field of biblical archaeology in the history of biblical archaeology. Like, it's that big. It is the golden chalice, and it's all just sitting out there in the desert, just sitting there.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
The Smithsonian, that if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
All right. Sweet baby Moses, we're back in Blurry Creatures' basement.
I think you made that saying.
Yeah,
up,
whatever.
right?
I think that's a saying. That used to be a saying. But we're talking mountains today, and we've talked mountains a lot on the podcast. I think we talked to Dr. Michael Heiser about it, and the Bible Project about Cosmic Mountain. And we have Joel Richardson, author Joel Richardson, in the basement today, talking about Mount Sinai. I'm excited about this. There's some controversy about it. And your friend Pastor Brian Hunter, welcome as well. You guys come together as a pair, apparently.
Yeah. We balance each other out somehow, some way.
I run my weird theories through the pastor to make sure.
Okay, good. Yeah. You got intangible accountability. I like that.
Yeah, Joel, great to have you here.
Yeah,
we were talking pre-roll, which I love, is that our mutual acquaintance Mancow calls you the Antichrist guy, so we won't do that this show, because we're going to go to Mount Sinai. And where do you?
Yeah, there's so much blurriness about that.
We forgot with Bob Larson, but
yeah,
we got to start show proper.
What are your thoughts on Bigfoot?
Yes,
Joel, you make some killer videos on social media.
Yeah, you do.
And I know you got some thoughts in there about the big guy.
What are my thoughts about Bigfoot?
Yeah,
I'm kind of agnostic.
Okay.
So if by Bigfoot what you mean is, do I believe in fun, magical, furry, a wild world? Then absolutely.
Okay.
Do I believe that there is some type of a giant hominid still surviving in the remote parts of the world? The longer that we don't have great videos and pictures now that everybody has phones with cameras, the more that I'm starting to doubt that.
Yeah.
But could it be something else? I love the way you guys frame it, that the world is a bit more blurry than
exactly. There are plenty of videos, Joel. They're just not in focus.
They all look like they're from 1990. Which
yeah.
Is on your Razor phone.
So I've got a little bit of a different take on Bigfoot. So when you drive a car all the time at home, but then when you travel someplace else, you usually rent a car that's not quite like the car that you drive at home. Or if you go to a third world country and you're like, in something really decrepit and it just doesn't quite work like what you're used to back home. I think that if you take that piece of the puzzle plus another piece of the puzzle from Dr. Michael Heiser's fiction work, Facade. Yeah. Are you familiar with that at all? Yeah. Okay, so in that book, without giving away too many spoilers, the plot unfolds where the bad guys are able to synthetically, through genetic manipulation and some magic hocus pocus, kind of like create these like gray aliens. And when they're done with them, they just kind of like dissolve, right? If you remember any of that from the book. Yeah. So here's my idea on Bigfoot. I think that Bigfoot is just like a rental vehicle for this realm. I don't know that you're ever going to find like Bigfoot bones, like legitimate. I don't know that we're ever going to capture or shoot one, but I think that he's just like a rental vehicle for this realm for, I don't know who, to run around in, do his thing, and then when they're done with Bigfoot, the Bigfoot suit dissolves, and
this is a new one.
This is the Inspector Gadget theory of Bigfoot. I like it.
Yeah. Is Bigfoot a stick shift? That's the question.
This message will spontaneously
But you guys are Southern boys, so here's my question in return.
Let's go.
This is a real question.
Yeah. Give it.
You're out hunting.
Yeah.
You're out hunting for elk.
Yep.
You've got a pretty good high-powered rifle.
Mm-hmm.
You have a clear juvenile Bigfoot in your sights. Do you take the kill shot or not?
Yeah.
Because you're going to prove it once and for all and settle this
question.
Yeah,
and then we can quit the show. We'll retire, man. We'll go on tour. We'll take
I had to make sure it's a juvenile. So still, just kill it.
Dude, yeah.
We've had a few.
You end the debate. I mean, we don't need Bigfoot to continue to be a mystery for the show to go on. I just think
you could stuff him.
Then we could live here.
Yeah,
or we could maybe just wing it.
Hey,
and
we
then I could raise him.
We interviewed a guy from Minnesota who said there was one stuffed in a museum as a kid that some guy had. It was a juvenile, same thing. Found it it was like in a river. They found it in a river, and then they had it on display for a couple of years, and then it's mysteriously vanished.
They always
most hunters don't pull the trigger, though. That is the thing. It's too human to shoot it.
Yeah.
What if it looks you in the eye? Now, is it?
It reads your mind.
Question.
That's the weird part.
Yeah. So I have a question. Is in your scenario, is this juvenile Bigfoot, is it menacing? Is it threatening? Or is it
doesn't
maybe
matter.
like
Doesn't matter, bro.
flower collecting?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yes.
You're going to take the shot.
Yeah.
Well, let's zoom out because we zoomed really far in.
Yeah.
Let's zoom out and then talk about Mount Sinai, the weirdness there. There's obviously on this show, you can get as weird as possible as you want about sort of things that you found there or evidence to suggest that it's a very blurry spot. Obviously mountains are strange places in the Bible. We've talked about this a lot of like, what's the significance? Why mountains? Why doesn't God give us the information in the plains, in the valleys? It's always on top of a mountain. There's some significance. Pyramids are like, artificial mountains. We've talked about all of it here.
Plus, this particular topic is a debate as well. That's what's interesting about this. What kind of makes it blurry is that there's a controversy in where the actual location of Mount Sinai is, because there's multiple countries or places that claim to be the Mount Sinai. And Joel, you're like Liam Neeson. You have a particular set of skills when it comes to Mount Sinai. So ready to hear what we got here.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, no, you're right. So there's a handful of candidates that scholars look at in terms of what is the real Mount Sinai. So we're talking about this mountain called Jebel al-Lawz, which means the mountain of almonds in Saudi Arabia, northwest Saudi Arabia. Yep. So I've got a bunch of pictures and things. So this picture right here, you're looking at it. The darkened peak, that's the peak. That's Jebel al-Lawz. The sort of lighter ridge that's down below, that's actually a secondary lower peak. So you're going to be about an hour just to get over this granite peak. And then you've got kind of this huge bowl up there. And then that would be the peak of Jebel al-Lawz. Now, the other main one, of course, is in the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. And then also you have Har Karkoum is a pretty popular candidate that's in Israel in the Negev. I am absolutely convinced, to me, the evidence is overwhelming that this is the real mountain. when you talk about the concept of, cosmic mountains, biblically speaking, to use some of Dr. Heiser's language, the two greatest cosmic mountains in the Bible is Sinai and Zion, far and away. They dominate the narrative. There's other, pretty important, even pagan, if you will, cosmic mountains, but really Sinai and Zion. And I'm not a huge woo-woo guy. I'm a pretty just down-to-earth type of guy, but I will say when you're there, and I'm always cautious to talk like this, but you can feel, I'll just say the echoes. And it's interesting when you read about Mount Sinai in the Bible, even before the great theophany, when God comes down and meets Moses and the Israelites, the Midianites called it the mountain of God. So it was actually called the mountain of God before all of the great events of the Bible. So there's something about the mountain that almost expands beyond the biblical narrative that we probably will never really know.
Yeah, and I think we could say that pay attention to the legends. The legends, like sort of this history that's passed down. Oral history is a big part of what we talk about. How people will say the natives experienced some of these things here in America with there was a race of mound builders before the natives got here, and it's not really written down in traditional history. It's an oral history. So why do you think they call it the mountain of God? What do you think happened for them to continue to call it that?
Calling all blurry parents out there. I know you guys are listening, and it's so awesome sometimes when you guys send us stories of your kids listening to Blurry Creatures, but sometimes you don't need all that heavy content, and you want just kids content that you can trust. And we've partnered with Brave. Brave has books, and they're not fluffy stories. They're deeply intentional, and they also have Brave Plus. It's a streaming platform filled with safe, uplifting shows, no agenda, no weird stuff. You're not going to walk in the room and wonder what your kids are watching, or you can even just do the dishes and trust that something crazy is not coming on their TV screen. Just trustworthy old school content like Strawberry Shortcake or Bob the Builder, and originals like Iggy and Mr. Kirk starring Kirk Cameron. Those are the days. But Brave Plus is a great idea. It's solved a lot of problems for parents who need good, wholesome content and don't have to sit there and make sure they go through every single piece of content because we're all busy. And Brave Books has so many great pieces of literature that your kids and you can enjoy together. So head over to bravebooks.com and use the code BLURRY to get 15% off. So shape the kids' imaginations, ground them in truth, and don't worry, and raise them brave. That's bravebooks.com, code BLURRY, to get 15% off these great books and this awesome content.
Well, okay, so this is actually a great point, is what's interesting. Okay, so in terms of the case for this being the real Mount Sinai versus some of the others, is with the traditional site, okay, so it's there, we've got a map in the pizza-shaped peninsula. So you had in the 4th, 5th century, you had the monastic movement started with Anthony, the Desert Fathers. They leave Alexandria to go out in the desert to pray because modern society is just getting too crazy. And
if they only knew.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was before. Anyway, so they just determined that this is the tallest mountain. They just go, this is the real Mount Sinai. Then you have these Saracens start killing the monks. So eventually one of the emperors comes down, builds a fortress, which is St. Catherine's Monastery. And then from that point forward, the Roman Empire is basically, this is the real Mount Sinai. And the other one gets forgotten. And it kind of fades out into among Christians and Jews, you don't really hear much talk about this after the 4th century. But what's interesting is when you go there, and so Saudi was closed up until 2019, okay? No tourists were allowed. You could only get in if you're working. So it was very closed off, right? So you had all these critics that sort of mocked Jebel Lawz as the real Mount Sinai. It was kind of looked down upon. But the reality is when you go there, all of the locals call it the Mountain of God. They say, you go into this town there called Al-Bidda, and they call it the Caves of Jethro. You go there, they're like, this is Jethro's house. This is the Well of Moses. There's a well right in the center of town. It's on the major ancient Arab caravan route. It's an oasis town. It's a very natural place where people would have lived, and it's very close to this other mountain, which all of the locals, all of these critics, they're like, oh, these crazy evangelicals, this little growing group of evangelicals are saying this is the real Mount Sinai. That's ridiculous. They're just listening to YouTube videos. And then you go there and the Bedouins are just like, yeah, I grew up here. This is the Mountain of Moses. We've always known it. My grandfather told me, and this type of thing. So there's a very vibrant tradition, and the Muslims are the ones that have preserved it, which is what's so interesting.
Why do you think there's like an actual controversy? Like, is it because there's some sort of benefit to having I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, like, why does it matter? There's certain things I know in our space that are hotly debated, but it seems like there's a reason one way or the other. But a mountain is an interesting debate. You know?
So there's a real fascinating history behind this, and some of it is in the 80s. You had this really colorful character named Ron Wyatt.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
American adventure. You know, he snuck into the kingdom with his two sons. Now, here's what's interesting. What was he going on? He was going on a bunch of these books written in the late 1800s. These French, British, Dutch explorers, Sir Alois Musil and Richard Burton, and they're exploring the land of Midian. And he's reading that, and then he looks at Josephus and Philo, so two first-century Jewish witnesses that say Mount Sinai is the tallest mountain in the land of Midian. And the academic consensus places Midian in Saudi Arabia. So he's reading that and just going, I don't think the traditional site is real. He sneaks in. And my answer is, and this might be a little cynical, I would say you've got all these guys that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their archaeology PhDs, and some anesthesiologist from the United States with no archaeological degree just sneaks in and finds what is it's not arguably, look, Mount Sinai and the Exodus, it is the golden chalice of biblical archaeology. You know, in the whole field of biblical archaeology, which is dominated by secular scholars, they'll say we really only have clear evidence that the Bible is true back until the time of David. You know, we've got wax seals and different things like that. Recently, several years ago, they found this little lead, this little piece of lead that has Yahweh's name and the curses that was up in Shechem. And so they say this could push things. Now, they're still debating this, right? Scholars debate things for years before they kind of settle on it. This could push things back to the time of Joshua. They go, wow. But all of them, across the boards, all biblical archaeologists, they'll say, we have zero evidence for the Exodus. And the Exodus is the foundation for the entire Bible. And they go, we can't find it. Well, the reason is because they've been looking in the wrong places. It's really that simple. But some neuroanesthesiologist or what, I'm not sure exactly what his job is, sneaks in and finds the grand, the golden chalice, and he's just some guy. Right. And of course there's ego. Academic world is filled with ego. Sometimes it's actually funny to read them argue amongst each other. And
we see that in Egypt right now, like with the most latest report about this, about what's underneath Khafre's pyramid, right? Yeah. And whether or not that's true, the old guard, if you will, Hawass and those guys, they hold the line, because it's just like science. We watched this play out in the last 5 years. Like wherever the money is, that's where you hold the line. Like,
there's big money in Mount Sinai. Is that what you're saying?
It's big money.
I would say there's big money in traditionally held views of Mount Sinai being on the Sinai Peninsula. They built churches. People for hundreds of years would make pilgrimages there. It was the established commercial destination for Mount Sinai, and with that investment, they're looking for a return on their investment for hundreds of years. So of course they would want to hold on to that for as long, fight tooth and nail to hold on to that site as the accurate original site.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's like also like the whole argument about where the temple actually is in Jerusalem, which is a whole other thing, right? You've got folks that talk about how it's, I forget the right term is, but it has to do with the idea of a warping of beliefs based upon historical stuff. So if, like you're saying, if Romans built a monastery at this place, and history has always said that, and then when you're up against this whole historical narrative now for millennia almost, for millennia that says this is the spot, and so you're backing into tradition. Like, it's the whole idea of there's a very, very interesting book about the location of the temple that I've read that just talks about why tradition would say that's perhaps the Western Wall is part of the old Roman fort and not necessarily the temple, because, and this is a side, but no, I'm just saying, but Jesus said every stone would be unturned. So why is there a wall left? There's all these interesting ideas about we are up against tradition and history that has been force fed or even like in the sense of a Roman fort or a monastery, that they planted this there and said, this is it, right?
Yeah, you can build the whole narrative, and you can build tourism around it. I have a degree in tourism, so I know about this.
You threw frisbees in college.
It's actually caused some political tension between Egypt and Saudi because of the tourism issue. The thing of it is in fairness, the traditional site, St. Catherine's, it's still, even though it's not the real Mount Sinai, it's filled with some of the most incredible Christian history. I mean, it's where Codex Sinaiticus was preserved, and the iconography, and there's so much there.
Right.
So it's still a beautiful place to go, but it's just not the real deal.
So there's macro and micro history, like our clues that this is the place. I mean, obviously we can talk about, the locals talk about it. What are some like things you found, little things that go, this is like a little smoking gun here and there?
Well, and to preface this too, Joel, this is not just theory. You've been there. Right? I don't know if we've covered that yet. Like you actually go take tours there. This is something so you've spent a lot of time at Jebel Al-Lawaz, and so you're on the ground guy when it comes to this.
Yeah, I was blessed. So the background. So first, interestingly, the book you're talking about, Temple, is by Bob Cornuke.
Yep.
And he also came after Ron Wyatt, and Bob was going in the late 80s. And then you had this other couple, the Jim and Penny Caldwell, that got all these pictures throughout the 90s. And then I'm just some guy that, there was many others that have gone. I showed up in 2018 was my first trip, and that was before it was open to tourism. And back then it was still really like a week before I got there, one of the locals was shooting at someone, and, it was real blurry in terms of whether it was even legal. But I got in with a legal visa and so forth. But your question?
My question was, I was just imagining you dressed as Borat sneaking into Saudi, but
this mountain is nice.
In terms of, so here's the thing. Okay, so when I came the very first time, well, actually, there's one of the Bedouins that's there. One of the Bedouins that's there that I love, and he speaks great English, but he's kind of like the Arab Borat. He sounds like, and I was like, man, your English is fantastic. Where'd you learn? And he goes, I like the American movies. And I said, oh, really? What's your favorite movie? And he said, my favorite is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I was like, whoa. But the horror movies are very popular in the Middle East.
How funny.
So,
yeah.
I like Leatherface.
My question was like, there's micro evidence that of all these things. People dig up stuff here in America, and they find, Egyptian artifacts here in America, and it just kind of throws a wrench in the whole narrative, right? But what have you found there in that site that kind of isn't just this big oral tradition? It's like, I found this thing here that, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I lost my train of thought. So here's the thing. The first time I got there, so there is tons of, there's everything from just the topography of the mountain, the shape of the mountain, the location of the mountain, and then you get into all of the little locations around it. There's an altar right at we can look at a lot of this stuff. But here's the thing. The first time I got there, I'm with my phone. I'm not an archaeologist.
Yeah.
2018. I'm walking up to the mountain, and actually we had because we snuck in, because we weren't sure if it was legal, we kind of missed where we were supposed to be. We kind of came in on the wrong valley. So we got up early in the morning. We go, there's Mount Sinai. Let's start hiking. I had like a 50-pound pack, and it was like 90 degrees by 6 in the morning. We hiked this mountain, and then all of a sudden we go, uh-oh. That's Mount Sinai. So we had to then go down through this valley. So as we're going through the valley on the northern side, there was a handful of us, 6 of us. We kind of get separated. We're about 50 yards apart. And I walk up to this. I see, it's kind of like a cave. And I see a painting. And I'm like, oh, cool. This looks like, some of those cave paintings you see in France or something. And it was a whole bunch of archers. And, it was a dozen or so archers.
Like a petroglyph?
Not a petroglyph. So technically a petroglyph is going to be chiseled into the rock by beating through kind of this darkened veneer. So jump back to that.
Look at that.
So there's one of the pictures, handful of them I threw in there, a couple pictures.
Just in the valley between these mountains.
Yeah, but now it's on it's right at the base of the mountain, literally on the northern side, right at the base of the mountain. And it's not a cave, it's just like a rock outcropping, but it's on the underside of the rock. Because the paintings won't survive if they are exposed to the weather.
Sure.
The petroglyphs will. So there's, you get a handful of them shooting. So I'm just, suddenly I got my iPhone, and I'm an archaeologist. I just start taking pictures. And amazingly, we had great cell service because it was out in the middle of nowhere. And I text my wife and I go, hey, look what I just found. She goes, that's exactly like in Exodus 19. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm the Bible teacher here. And so I amplified it with this rock climbing app. It changes the color so you can really see it with some of those. But anyway, so at the end of Exodus 19, it says, so the theophany is about to happen. God's about to come down on the mountain. The Lord says, tell the people to consecrate themselves. And he says, but tell them, don't approach the base of the mountain. Don't touch it. He says, if you do, you'll be killed. You'll either be stoned to death or shot through with arrows. And I was like, looky here.
Yeah.
What a coincidence. And this is the thing, is it's coincidence after coincidence after coincidence. Yeah. But there was a young kid that was with us, a 13-year-old, and he runs over, and this is about 20 yards from the painting of the archers. And this is, to me, I thought this would be one of the coolest things for your audience. I actually think this is a very legitimate pictographic ancient evidence of giants.
All right, everyone out there has a subscription. You have a subscription to this. You have a subscription to that. And we understand that in these days. Sometimes you don't even know what you have a subscription to. What do? You join with Rocket Money. Rocket Money is an awesome company that has the ability to help you cancel unwanted subscriptions that might be time-consuming or you don't know how to cancel them. It's a really cool app. You can't go wrong with Rocket Money. And it's a personal finance app that finds and cancels unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. And you can see all your subscriptions in one place. If you don't want something, click it. And Rocket Money can help you cancel it. Its dashboard is super simple. It's clear to view your expenses across all accounts. And Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved people $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using the app's premium features. So if you want to be like us and you just want to be free out there on the trail, like L.A. Marzulli says, out on that trail, be as free as possible financially. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/blurry today. That's rocketmoney.com/blurry. rocketmoney.com/blurry.
So
look at that.
And so, yeah, you can kind of see it here again. It's faded.
It looks like they're wearing Jinko jeans, but, they're massive or more...
Something.
Parachute pants, perhaps.
Yeah, they're all wearing parachute pants.
They're a tribe of breakdancing giants.
But you see these little, so those audio listeners, you see these little guys with arrows, and then there's these big, massive characters that are obviously 5 or 6 times as big as the other ones. So.
And it's not an issue of perspective, because if you look, now the big people, there's a little person right up next to them.
Yeah.
And you can see some arrows, so it does seem to be portraying a battle. And it does seem to be portraying a big cluster of little people and a big cluster of very, very large people.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys ever been to like desert Southwest, Canyonlands area and seen some of the pictographs there? I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and would spend a lot of time farting around Moab and exploring canyons with my buddies and like looking for Anasazi ruins. And we would come across so many walls of pictographs, and interestingly enough, separated by who knows how long and unimaginable distance. What I'm seeing in this photo of these really broad-shouldered, small-headed, you can tell that they're people, but they're highly stylized, does not look too unsimilar to many pictographic walls in the Canyonlands. What is that connection in relation?
Yeah. Well, we talk about the mound builders were here, and the natives fought them just in the same way. This sort of man versus giant narrative is all over the place, and they went to secure remote locations. At the end, it seemed like they retreated to islands and other places, and there's all this weird history there. We've talked about that endlessly on our show.
Whether it be like Sardinia or Easter Island, they'll have lore of giants. And then, of course, in the Southwest, we have... Yeah. Like it does look a lot like stuff from the Anasazi. It looks like stuff that I've seen in Colorado.
There's lots of creatures in that.
But then there's the theory it would be that like the conquest of the Holy Land, there was a diaspora of as they were being hunted by the Israelites. Basically Caleb and Joshua come back and say we can take them, and they go into the Holy Land, and they, it's the genocide problem for a lot of progressive Christians, right? You have this God is sanctioning judgment on these people groups, all the ites, the Zizaites and the walled city of Jericho. There's giants, and so
Yeah,
we've got Native American lore about giants here, and all over the world. There's a lore of giants. So.
What is the giant history connected to Mount Sinai? I don't really know, off the top of my head.
Yeah, and so this is one, again, thanks to Dr. Heiser, who actually had worked through this in some pretty intricate detail, is Israel clearly is part of the Exodus story, the Exodus account. When they were at Rephidim, which is actually where the split rock is in that general vicinity, they fought the Amalekites. So there was this massive battle between the Israelites and the Amalekites. And you go, okay, but what does that have to do with giants? Well, the Amalekites were among the giant clans. So if you do the homework and work through it, it's the Amalekites were essentially a mix between some of the children of Esau from the Mount Hor, which is kind of right there in Petra, and some other clans, some of the other ites. I don't remember it all, but they were among the giant clans. So you go, okay, again, biblically speaking, it's not something that most people learn in Sunday school, but Israel did fight an army of giants, and they were told to completely wipe them out. Of course, they didn't. And then here at the location of the mountain that was believed to be the real Mount Sinai in the first century, again, Josephus and Philo, two different Jewish witnesses, are saying this is the real Mount Sinai. You go there and you go, and there seems to be, and it does not seem to be a stretch, a real picture of a battle between giants and people. And they would paint these, by the way, it's always on the underside, but they're oftentimes the petroglyphs and these, I notice, they're always at, I'll say like an intersection where there is a road that people would have been traveling, and they're looking for a rock that serves as almost like a billboard.
Yeah.
And even like the archers, I go, this is essentially an ancient version of this property protected by Smith & Wesson.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like cross this and you're going to get shot.
Yeah. So you think this is at the time this was created, or this was created later? You think this is that old? That's
a good question. Was it a record after the fact? But I mean, here's what's crazy. And again, I don't mean to be sensational, but it's not unreasonable to say it's possible that Moses himself actually painted these.
Sure.
Like it's actually not unreasonable.
40 years in the desert, that's a lot of time to paint, Yeah.
Develop some skills.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
And as a lifelong, I was a decorative painter for 20 years. I'm fascinated by, traditional materials. I'm like, I wonder what they use for a binder. It's going to be earth pigments, but they use something that caused that to stay for 3,000 plus years.
The blood of giants, probably.
Yeah. I prefer the blood of little people.
That actually, hey, Nate, you're going to hurt Nate's feelings.
Hey, we talk a lot about the little people on our show.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I am convinced that the government did breed some dachshund into my stock at some point.
To help better control you.
Yeah. So let's continue with the story. You're hiking in, you go past this ancient billboard, and you're like, look at that. You notice there's some interesting scenes of fighting with arrows, and then you see these giant people. And then there's this history there. Your wife catches you and knows more than you do, which is typical. And then you keep going to the mountain. And then what happens?
So let's talk about the mountain itself. Yeah. I showed you a picture of it. I've got a few things here. Okay, there's a great picture. Go back. Okay, so this is really, you're looking at the mountain. Now, this is a bit deceptive, but this granite, lighter colored section of the mountain that you have the arrow on, the arrow is pointing to a cave. Okay, so if this is the real Mount Sinai, we would expect to have a cave because we know Elijah went there. He was in a cave. And right on the face of the mountain, there is this cave. Now, when you go up over that ridge right there where, you've kind of almost got these at the top, almost looks like little tablets or something. You go up over that, you're in a bowl. And so, go to one of these next mountains. So that's the bowl. I call it the plateau. Now, when scholars read the biblical text, apart from looking at any pictures, they go, Mount Sinai appears to be a two-tiered mountain because you have the story where as God makes covenant with Israel at the mountain, at the end to seal the deal, because it was a betrothal covenant. God was betrothing himself, essentially a marriage covenant, which is a precursor, by the way, to the marriage supper of the Lamb at the end of the age. The betrothal starts at Sinai. It culminates at Mount Zion. That's the way it's framed from a prophetic literary perspective. But at the end of the covenant, he says, Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, the 70 representative elders of Israel, come up to the mountain. But then Moses goes all the way up. But when they go up to the mountain, it says they looked up, and it's one of the most sublime, surreal passages in the Bible. And it says they looked up and they saw the feet of God. And then it's almost like it's almost like the Bible can't even accurately describe it. It goes, and it was something like a pavement of cobalt or sapphire blue, as bright blue as the sky. And then it says they ate and drank and they saw God. And then it says, but God did not raise his hand. In other words, he didn't kill them. They saw his feet and he didn't kill them. But then it says, Moses, you go all the way up. So again, scholars, just by reading the text, and then you get there, you go over the first ridge, and there's this massive plateau that's the size of a football field up there. And then you're looking up at the secondary peak that Moses would have ascended all the way up to. And I go, okay, so just the very topography of the mountain itself it's exactly what the Bible describes. And so what scholars say is they say it's like the holy place and the Holy of Holies. Only Moses could go into the Holy of Holies. So the mountain itself is a prototype of the temple itself. And what's interesting is it faces perfectly east, just like the temple does. So whether it was this or the tent of meeting that they built, the tabernacle in the desert, or the temple later, they all face perfectly east. So from the tip of that mountain through here down to, there's an altar at the base. So look at pictures of that Moses built. That faces perfectly east. Yeah, so there it is a little closer. Oh, go back to the night one. So we camped in 2019 up there on the plateau. My buddy took this picture. You can see the Milky Way. I hate to use the word magical, but it was one of the absolute most magical experiences of my life. And it was actually during Sukkot, which is when the Israelites camp outside. You're supposed to be able to look up and see the stars. And it was just by accident, So anyway, I just had to share that one.
So yeah, the Bible describes, and those audio listeners, it's like there's like this field at the top of the second or the first break, and then they could have had a meal there, hang out, have a meal, and then you can see from this like area there's another peak, and he would have walked on to that part, and only he can go there. That's interesting that you compare it to the temple.
Joel, is this topography different than what we see in at the traditional Mount Sinai spot? Is that mountain as well a double or a double peaked mountain?
They kind of say that it is, but it's kind of like you kind of have to shoot. Yeah, this is better.
Yeah.
So I took a archaeologist, this guy named Eli Shukran. So he's one of Israel's like most legendary leading biblical archaeologists. Really has an amazing repertoire of things that he's discovered under his belt. And the first time I just said, I'm not going to try to convince him. I know how academics are, just let him see it for himself. And then he was pretty quiet. The second time he came back, and one of our guests said, Eli, do you think this is definitely the real Mount Sinai? And he was like, I think Joel is completely convinced. He said, but I think it is definitely the best candidate of any of the candidates. Yeah. And I went, win. Because to me, I view my role in all of this as I'm taking the baton from Ron Wyatt and the original explorers and Jim and Penny Caldwell. And I'm not an academic, but I'm trying to hand the baton to the scholars, because I have every bit of confidence that in time, because honestly, there's going to be a frenzy of archaeologists going, because they all want to kind of leave their mark and this type of thing. I'm actually bringing a few more in October. And once this becomes widely accepted, which it will, it is going to be the single greatest, again, transition in the field of biblical archaeology in the history of biblical archaeology. Like, it's that big. It is the golden chalice, and it's all just sitting out there in the desert, just sitting there. Yeah. Like, you go to Israel, like you guys are about to go, it's amazing, okay? But they'll be like, park your bus here and look down, and 30 feet down, that's where Jesus probably could have walked. Right. This is where a miracle happened. It's like, but this is just, it's like virgin, untouched. And because, again, it was forgotten.
I think time capsule. You're like, you can walk there, and there aren't green trash cans and like a little trail, stay on the trail with ropes. You're like at the place walking the same way that the Israelites would have,
there's no trail.
And they're discovering a lot of this stuff now. Like, they're using LiDAR, radar, and they're finding, there's this pyramid in this country we never knew that existed. And this is like a new, like a lot of this stuff is coming back to for people who are rediscovering things or discovering them for the first time. So what else, when you're on this trek up, are you seeing little things? I mean, obviously we talk a lot about megalithic history, things that were like pre-flood and stuff like that. Is there any other signs besides these cave drawings? Like, are you
we said there's an altar.
Yeah.
Like, and what else are you?
Yeah.
Cave of Jethro. Take us there, Joe.
Yeah. I actually skipped kind of past the caves of Jethro, and the caves of Jethro are basically like what you would see at Petra. But let's see.
Is this like a day hike or a couple days?
It's a solid day. Okay, go down to the bottom one. There's a lighter picture. Boom. Okay, there's the altar. So Exodus 24, Moses got up early the next morning and he built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and he set up 12 stone pillars, which are representative of the 12 tribes of Israel, and then they do all the burnt offerings and so forth. So it also says in Deuteronomy that it had to be made with uncut stones. So these are not cut, they're just natural stones stacked. So go back to the picture. So right at the base of the mountain is this, it's kind of like a slaughter corral, if you will, and it's kind of shaped like a hockey stick. So the bulls would go in one end, and they can't see what's about to happen, because Moses is up the other end, cutting heads off, and the cows get upset. So it's not until they turn the corner that they realize, Clarabelle, God has a wonderful plan for your life. Yeah. And but then at the end is the altar. And so I think it was in 2004, the Saudi, back then they didn't want all these crazy Americans and explorers sneaking in. So they were trying to say, no, this has nothing to do with it. Now they're kind of going, oh, it clearly is. And they believe it is, by the way. The Saudis do. Let's see. All right, right there's an overhead picture of the altar. So that's looking down. Now at the base there, at the end where the altar is, they did an archaeological survey in 2004. And so on one hand, they were trying to disprove that it's Mount Sinai, but I think go to the next slide. I may have quoted it. Yep. So when they excavated it, they found a layer of ash, charcoal, and bones found mixed with other organic materials, which is exactly what you would expect to find if it's an altar.
An altar, yeah.
And now this one skeptic said, it was a kitchen. And I go, it's not a living quarters. First of all, it's only this high. There's no doors, windows. It's not a bunch of people who were living there. Now go to the next slide below, and there just so happens to be 12 pillars right next to it.
Wow, look at that. Round ones.
Yeah. Now, the word there, for what it's worth, the word in the Hebrew is matziba, which is most often a standing stone. So it's not always, a carved column.
Sure.
But in a few instances in the Bible, it can be. So it's usually not, but it can be. And so again, I just say, look at that coincidence. Yeah. What a coincidence. What a coincidence that the mountain that the Jews in the first century during the time of Jesus and Paul believed was the real Mount Sinai, that it also just happens to have an altar, just like the Bible describes at the base. It just so happens to have the pillars, just like the Bible describes. And it matches the biblical criteria. So when he slaughters the bulls, then he would sprinkle the blood on the pillars, which represent the vast number of people, because he's not walking out there like a Catholic priest just sprinkling everyone with blood. That would be a good 1980s reference to what movie?
Yeah. Chainsaw Massacre.
No, at the prom, Harry. They dumped the blood on him.
Blood.
Yeah. Flashing blood reference.
Another horror reference.
Yeah.
But look, can we go backwards real quick though, Joel? And I just you're finding this evidence here, but like we pull out in like a macro view, does this make more sense for the course of the Exodus than them going to the traditional Mount Sinai? Because I know that part for me is interesting because you have the Exodus stories. They leave Egypt, they cross the Red Sea, and then they're in the desert until this event at Sinai. But does it make more sense from like a geographical standpoint, like for them to end up here as opposed to end up in Sinai? I'm just kind of going back to the beginning because we're looking at the evidence you found, but like from a big view, does it make more sense for them to be here than to be in the Sinai Peninsula?
Yeah, so I don't have the quote here from Josephus, but okay, so there's a huge debate, and this is actually the linchpin of the debate, is where did they cross? Because when you look at the Sinai Peninsula, you've got these two fingers. You've got the Suez on the western side, the Gulf of Aqaba on the eastern, on our right side, and the Bible describes the sea being split. It's the Yam Suf. And there's this massive debate. What does this word mean? Yam Suf? Is it the Red Sea or the Reed Sea, etc.? The more naturalist traditional scholars want to say it happened on the Suez Canal through this shallow marsh. But the wind blew so much, the water built up and it drowned. It was a natural event. The Bible describes something much more like Cecil B. DeMille's, something ridiculous.
Supernatural.
It's intended, the whole purpose of the Lord ripping the ocean in half is to demonstrate that he is the supreme, absolute superior God over all of the majestic gods of Egypt, right?
Yeah.
So Josephus specifically describes the location of the sea crossing in detail. He says the Egyptians were up on this very high precipice. It says it was so high you could almost not see to the top. And the Israelites were pinned down on the beach. On the Suez side, there's no mountains. On the Aqaba side, it's exactly what he describes. In fact, there's something called Wadi Watir, this incredible wadi that works its way out to this beach at Nuweiba Beach. And it's exactly what so either Josephus, now again, you're talking, let's say, depending on when you believe the Exodus was, 1,000, 1,200 years later. Either we believe that by the 1st century, the Jews had lost where it was, which is highly unlikely, or Josephus was right.
Mm.
And so it really comes down to whether or not you believe the splitting of the sea was a miracle of that level. And let me just say this too, from a biblical perspective. The Lord intended to write the story of the Exodus, which culminates at the mountain with the great theophany. God comes down on the mountain. Like, there's amazing stuff in the New Testament. Jesus does miracles, but there's not like God comes down in fire on the mountain and 1 million+ people are begging Moses, like, please tell him to stop talking. Like, we can't bear it. With the blasting of the shofars and thick smoke and storm clouds and an earthquake and the mountains shaking. All of this imagery is then deliberately appropriated by Jesus, by Paul, Peter, and John in the New Testament to refer to the return of Jesus. So biblically speaking, the theophany, the return of Jesus from heaven, is the far more glorious, far more grandiose, majestic, terrifying, culminatory event in the entire story of redemption, and it's patterned after the theophany at Sinai. So it's an important sort of part of the whole story. It's intended to be like, and the prophets are constantly saying, remember. The entire story of the Passover is do this so that you will remember. Teach these things to your children when you're walking here, doing that. Remind them, remember the things that God did back then, like the crazy stuff. Remember the insane stuff. Remember when he ripped the ocean in half?
Yeah.
And the reason he wants us to remember and believe those things is because he wants us, quite frankly, to have confidence. Because if we're Christians, and this is the reality, biblically speaking, our entire faith system, all of our hope, everything hinges on the fact that we believe that someday God is going to come back from heaven in blazing fire. He's going to rip the sky open with an army of angels in the form of an anthropomorphic Jewish man to engage in a hostile takeover of the earth and save us. Pretty crazy stuff to believe.
Yeah.
But so also is the fact that he ripped the ocean in half.
Right.
And so that's what he's saying is he goes, remember this so that you'll have faith for this stuff. The prophets are pointing both back and forward.
Well, Jesus at the Last Supper says, do this in remembrance of me.
Yeah.
It's this idea, it's the same, it echoes, right? It's the remember the things I did.
It's absolutely
he knows
connected.
He's going to the cross.
So in the Old Testament, if I can for just a moment, in the Old Testament, when God is speaking of the feasts, we in the Christian church have for such a long time thought of those as like, oh, that's what Jews do. They celebrate. We're coming up on Passover this weekend at the time of this taping, but we've always thought of them as like that's what Jews do as part of their religion. The Bible is really clear. These are my feasts, and at our church we talk about God's family traditions. Like every family has got weird, fun or quirky traditions that they subject their children to as a part of building identity and culture. God is no different. He has family traditions that he invites the world into. Come be a part of my family, gain identity through the participation of my feasts. And he says that these feasts are part of them is to be a holy convocation. And that word convocation is a word that we don't use at all today. Convocation is a really churchy word. But the meaning of that word is sacred assembly, a special side set of time, but also rehearsal. The definition and concept of rehearsal is embedded in the holy convocation. So what's a rehearsal? A rehearsal is a practice for something to come. And when Peter is speaking on the day of Pentecost, and he quotes Joel, and he says, this that you're seeing on the day of Pentecost is that which the prophet Joel spoke of. This is that. I believe that the Lord is trying to bring planet Earth into a family tradition, not only to remember what he has done, but to prepare our hearts for what he will do again. In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus answers the question, what is it going to be like what's the sign of the return of the Son of Man? He says the sign is going to be the return of the Son of Man when Jesus comes back. And I think it will especially grab the attention of the nation of Israel, because the way and manner in which Jesus returns, Jews will be like, oh, this that I'm seeing in Jesus of Nazareth, is that what we saw on Mount Sinai? And they'll connect the dots.
I love that.
Practice.
Practice.
We're talking about practice.
And I love that your understanding of the Old Testament is so dynamic in this age where Christians don't know what to do with the Old Testament. You know, a lot of mega church pastors are like, yeah, let's just put the Old Testament back there. They didn't really get it, and you're trying to breathe life into them. Like, this is some of the best stuff in the Bible, and let's talk about that. And I wanted to ask you a question about, in the New Testament, you see Moses show up on a mountain again in the Transfiguration. What's the connection in your guys' mind between Moses showing up there?
So this is, I kind of threw this out to you, and I'm going to also kind of filter this through the pastor to make sure we're not in heresy. But this is we're crossing into the realm of genuine speculative theology. So I know you guys enjoy that.
We like to speculate a little, Joel.
Yeah.
There's sometimes you can take a theory and throw it into the theological world, into the world of theologians, and they're just going to go nuts. And this is one of those things. But I actually think it passes the test.
So you're going to chum the waters, if you will.
Yeah, to
let's go.
Let the Theo Bro sharks come and
Theo Bros unite.
So, okay, first of all,
oh man,
theologians have long recognized the connections between the Mount of Transfiguration and that event, or those events, with the Exodus and the Great Theophany at Sinai. Obviously, you have Moses and Elijah are there. These are the two characters. Obviously, they're talking to God at Mount Sinai. And the motif of his face shining like the sun, again, this is all imagery that begins at Sinai. You have descriptions later, like by Moses, Deuteronomy 33, that describe God coming from heaven, but he is in anthropomorphic form. He has hands, he's marching, he has feet, lightning shooting out of his hands, or fire, depending on which translation, and he's shining like the sun. It's like he's dawning, he's shining, he's radiating. So Isaiah 60 uses the language, but it's not coming from the east. The sun rises in the east, it's coming from the south. He's coming from Sinai. And so some theologians say it's just kind of, kind of sensational language, poetic language about the Exodus. God didn't literally march before the people. It's just kind of saying that. I fully believe that it's drawing from Exodus language, but it's actually speaking of the return of Jesus. That all of these passages that describe Yahweh in anthropomorphic form coming back, and it literally says with his angels, these are the passages that the New Testament draw from as they develop this doctrine or theology of Jesus' return, and etc. So him shining like the sun, his face is radiating and so forth. That's all Exodus language. Also the timing in terms of the holidays and so forth. But it uses the language. Now, here's the thing. Theologians or scholars don't really know where the real Mount of Transfiguration is. Some say it's Mount Tabor in the northern Galilee. Some even say it's Mount Hermon. It's not really, they're not really sure, but when it says Jesus took them up on a very great mountain, high mountain. It's the same phrase as when when Satan takes Jesus up onto the pinnacle of the temple and so forth. So it's using the same language of possible translation. Okay, so this is where
should we use the P word, guys? Portal.
Oh,
Hey.
could it have been
There's a lot of P words. I don't know where you're going with that one.
Yeah. Portals everywhere.
We thought you were going to say Pringles. That's really 80s.
There's some in here, actually. Yeah. They're probably not any good anymore.
Yeah, see right here. We got the 80s version.
Straight from the 80s.
I have to do a squirrel. My wife's grandfather is the engineer that designed and made the Pringles stacking machine. Like, he's the one that made Pringles.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
And
what a legacy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We are very good at distracting our guests from what they were talking about. But
portal.
back to the portal.
Back to the portal.
Put that away, Nate.
Okay.
So the question is, did Jesus take them? Did they translate? Was there a portal to, were they on Mount Sinai? So again, the Bible, we acknowledge that the Bible teaches that there is such thing as translation.
Hey, I like this idea.
I mean, you've got that.
Yeah, because what was who translated? My brain is
Ethiopian eunuch and Philip.
Yeah, Philip.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is, and how does this work? So now, because we're dealing with a biblical worldview, which is like, how does it work? They come down, they peer, they eat, they beat people up. They're physical, and then they walk through wall and disappear, whatever. Like, are they faster than the speed of light? Like, we don't understand the physics of it, but there is physics.
Yeah.
That's kind of a whole nother issue. In any case, okay, so could they have been on Mount Sinai? And then later in not sure if it's 1st or 2nd Peter, he says, we saw the majestic visage on the holy mountain. So he uses that phrase, the holy mountain. And as we talked about earlier, there are not many mountains in the Bible that are called the Holy Mountain. The premier ones would be Sinai or Zion. So you can say, well, was it then called the Holy Mountain after the fact because of the Transfiguration event, or was it previously they were on the Holy Mountain? And I think there's actually some legitimate evidence. Now, here's the crazy part. Here's the wormhole.
I like the crazy part.
Here's where.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I think I have the verse in here. This passage blows my mind, because I try to envision it.
Yeah.
Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside of the camp. So this was the tent of meeting, a good distance from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. Everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. And it came about whenever Moses went out that the people would arise and stand at the entrance of their own tents, because it was so intense, they would just stand there, and the pillar would descend. The pillar of cloud or fire at night descends from heaven, and it would come down at the entrance of the tent. And the Lord would speak with Moses. When all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing there, they would worship. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face. Now, this is the phrase, just as a man talks to his friends, one of his buddies, just like we're chit-chatting right now.
Yeah.
Moses would talk to God face to face, and sometimes, he would wear a veil. So who was Jesus talking to on the Mount of Transfiguration?
Moses.
Talking to Moses and Elijah, who God also talked to at Mount Sinai. And this is the speculative thing. We can't prove it. Could this have been a wrinkle in time? And the Mount of Transfiguration is this.
I love this theory, because I don't remember what we talked about it once before, but the idea that, like, there's a time event here. That's for whatever reason, it's when Yahweh is on the mountain meeting with Moses and then also meeting with Elijah, that Yahweh incarnate, Christ, that they're actually seeing a time event. So to Moses, maybe I'm already spoiling it, but I love this idea because time is an interesting construct. We live in a linear timeline, but God is outside of space and time. Like, he's looking at it all from above, and he sees it all played out. It feels more like a
circle. It feels more like a circle when you get into the blurry.
It's a circle.
It's
all a circle.
So you're saying that all these events could be happening at the same time, basically.
Somehow outside of time, because I do believe time's linear, and the Bible does actually communicate a linear thing, but
there's prophecy, and it tells you these things are going to happen. So how does it know it's going to happen? Free will, but there's these events, they're coming, and we see the foreshadowing of Christ all throughout the Old Testament. And What is it?
They translate. So Jesus, the idea here, the theory here, as we speculate, right, is that Jesus, perhaps they all translate to the holy mountain, to Sinai, and they get to witness this event where, whether it happens in space or time or not, is this represent. It's the Bible thing is always it's a representation of the law and prophets, right, and Jesus' fulfillment. That's great, but I feel like God is so much smarter than just a simple. There's always layers to it. It's like Jesus speaking in parables. There's like this, it's an onion. So what else is happening here? Which I like that idea that not only is it that representing, but it's also this could be perhaps a space-time event where you have.
There's just an additional thought that I was just thinking about
Brian.
as we were discussing this. Is we all remember Peter's reaction to that moment, and for us blockheads, we can relate to Peter. Every opportunity he has, he's always putting his foot in his mouth.
Right.
And this incredible moment is unfolding, and Peter says, and then he says something that for our modern context is very difficult to, why does he say that? It's so random. Lord, should we construct some shelters?
Yeah.
But what if Peter was realizing that moment that was unfolding millennia before on Mount Sinai, and as Joel had said earlier, that the invitation to come up on the mountain was part of in Hebrew they call it a ketubah, like a marriage contract. And when Peter says, should we build shelters? What if he was thinking, should we build like a huppah, like a marriage canopy to commemorate this moment? I was just thinking about that because perhaps, what if Peter was making the connection of the Mount Sinai events unfolding?
Yeah, or sukkah,
a sukkah, a shelter. Like let's stay here.
Which also the sukkah and sukkot applies to the millennial period when God now dwells with us, because the whole point is that we're aliens and strangers here. So yeah, the imagery.
Or he's making a tent of meeting, right? This idea of like he's like, we need a tent of meeting because God's here speaking as he did with that. I love that.
I always wondered what the significance of the three disciples being, only the three of them being there was. Can you remind our listeners too why Elijah's part in this story? Because I don't remember his connection to Mount Sinai.
So Elijah has a conflict with Ahab and Jezebel, and he has the showdown. And after he has this amazing victory and fire falls from heaven, he gets afraid and he flees because they're threatening his life. And so biblically speaking, it says that he went on a 40-day journey from Beersheba, which is in southern Israel, 40-day journey to Mount Sinai. So, and then of course, on the energy of one energy.
Have you Google mapped that 40-day journey? Have you Google mapped it?
Yeah, and kind of worked it through. So
possible?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So the only two candidates that it allows is either the traditional site or Loz, because then it rules out Har Karkum, which is way closer. You can probably get there in a few days, max, that's in Israel. So that's another candidate that the biblical criteria conflicts with. But 40 days from Beersheba to Jebel Loz works. In fact, I know a guy, this is funny, that has lived in the area of Petra for years. He's on the spectrum, very gifted, a genius. And he actually walked from Jordan all the way down there years ago, all by himself. And I was like, how in the world did you do it? And how'd you carry the water? And he was like, after a while, water was just kind of a burden to excess to carry. And I'd be like, I just look at the moon at night and huddle down and sleep and then just get up and walk. And, so it's totally doable. But it's a beast of a mountain for sure. Oh, and there's another connection, by the way. This is my beloved son. So when he's in the Mount of Transfiguration, the voice from heaven says, "This is my beloved son with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." And I'm not sure if I have the other verse, but it's very, very similar to, there it is, Exodus 23. "Behold, I'm going to send an angel before you to guard you along the way, to bring you to So he actually is saying that the cloud, the pillar itself, is the angel of the Lord. And it's going to bring you to the place which I prepared. Be on your guard before him and obey his voice. Listen to him. Do not be rebellious toward him. He will not pardon your transgression. Who forgives sin?
Jesus.
God, since my name is in him." So here you have a pre-incarnate manifestation of God the Son in the angel of the Lord in the cloud. And the Lord says, obey him, listen to him. And then at the Transfiguration, he speaks from heaven, this is my Son, listen to him. So again, some other parallels back to Elijah.
Yes. Let's go.
What about the top of the mountain? Like there's always, I've seen things about how it looks like it's burnt. Is that, when we were following your journey up, you camped out in that area beneath that next peak, which is the peak of Sinai. Did you end up going up to the top, and is it burnt like people say it is, or blackened, or?
I mean, you can clearly look at it. But it's basalt. So I'm not a geologist. So the rocks down below, it's granite. It's what they call rotten granite or something. It's fairly porous, and they're both volcanic. And one has more silica. I'm not sure, what causes it. But so it's basalt. Now, could it be? Now look at that. So you go, this is the mountain that they believed was the real Mount Sinai. Could that have been because it says to the sons of Israel, the mountain appeared to be consumed with fire. I don't know. I don't know what caused it. My hesitancy in making a big deal of that is that you see that same distinction throughout the region.
And we're looking at audio listeners. We're looking at a picture of the final peak, and it's got like this discoloration.
The top of the mountain is clearly much, much darker than the rocks below. But as I said, people have had it tested. The minerals at the top it's basalt, volcanic basalt. The rocks down below are granite.
And that's not too uncommon to have like a basalt layer or a basalt intrusion in the midst of granite. I'm from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and the Tetons have a number of places where you have these big basalt lines running through granite, and they actually make for great rock climbing.
Yeah.
So that's a fun story, but probably not likely that it's burned.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to
make
Moses.
Elijah's on this 40-day journey. I just want to cap off his connection to this and then get back to the mountain.
Well, so we'll use this as a segue, because here's the thing. If he was in that cave and he was lamenting, because Elijah was basically saying, like, I'm the only one that's left. I'm the only faithful, godly servant. And the Lord goes, okay, Pee-wee, he goes, I got, 7,000 that have not bowed the knee. He goes, I might feel like you're the only one left, but chill. But see, here's the thing is, he's in that cave and he's looking down. So here's the cave. That's the picture. You can see
that's when the ravens feed him. And
he gets, that's how the Lord provides for him. But he's looking down directly at, and we'll look at this, what is the altar, the golden calf altar. So not only does the Bible describe Moses' altar, it also has the story of the golden calf catastrophe. And so he would have looked down and said, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's always been this. It's always been a remnant within Israel that's faithful. It's always been, there's been, the majority are rebellious. It's always been a faithful remnant. And it's always going to be that way. And that my story is not new, and then the Lord reveals himself. But so the pictures now, which are petroglyphs of some of the cows that are there.
In the cave.
No, not in the cave, but if you're sitting in the cave, he's looking down at the altar.
Did you find anything in that cave?
It's just a cave, but he easily could have slept there. I mean, it's about 20 feet back, and it's soft sand.
I love the context though, Joel, because you think you read these stories and you imagine these things, but when you see, and we're taking a look here, at these pictures of where he would have looked down, then it is this parallel. He's lamenting that like Moses, I'm on this mountain, and Israel is rebelling. In the same way they looked down and they were building the gold. Moses was seeing them building the altar of the golden calf below, which is a really interesting perspective because I don't know. When you're absent going there, it just feels so abstract sometimes in our heads to be like.
And Elijah was hiking there to escape being killed, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what theologians, people far smarter than me, have talked about the significance of seeing those two giants, if you will, of figures from the Old Testament on the Mount Transfiguration with Jesus, is that both Moses, who would represent the law, and Elijah, who represents the prophets, both the prophets and the law are condoning, blessing Jesus and his ministry, that for once and for all, for that any human heart that would bend the knee of their heart to the leadership of Jesus, the idolatry can finally be put to rest that Elijah was seeing, that Moses encountered, and that Jesus was confronting continually throughout his ministry.
Which the Lord is constantly confronting in all of our lives. And then to add to that, there's a really solid case that Paul went there, and that's where Paul received his gospel.
Oh.
So there's only 2 times that the word Arabia is used in the New Testament, and that's Galatians 1 and Galatians 4. So first Paul says, look, after I got knocked off my horse and I had my experience, he goes, I didn't consult any of the other apostles. I didn't consult any man. He says, I went to Arabia. Well, that's a weird juxtaposition. You didn't consult man. The inference is I consulted God. So I went to Arabia to consult God. So then scholars say, did he just go to Arabia out in the desert to be alone? Well, in Galatians 4, he specifically says Mount Sinai is in Arabia. So if he's going to consult God, he was a Pharisee of Pharisees, zealous for Torah, and he goes down there and he's trying to work through this whole thing, and he goes, no, like my people, Torah, it's not perfect in the sense that it accomplishes perfection. Otherwise, we wouldn't need Jesus. Right. It's perfect in what it was designed to do, which is as a tutor to lead us to Jesus. And so he comes away with this revelation. He writes Galatians, which is very, very nuanced. But he says, that is where I received my gospel directly from God. And he goes, and it was like 4 years later, I went and met Peter and some of the others. And so a very, very logical case, again, not my weird theory, but academics would affirm this, that Paul probably spent time there as well.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're like laying out the case that like in ancient times, Mount Sinai would have been the place. If you're confused, you don't know what's going on, you go back there and maybe something will happen.
As a leader, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you show up there, chances are you're in a place where you could figure something out, or you could get some message, or it's just not a random spot. I'm not just climbing any old mountain and praying, God, give me an answer. It's like you go to this mountain.
Yeah, and a lot of folks that I bring, they go, man, I've been dreaming about this since I was a kid, and they go, I got to make it to the top. I'm going to meet the Lord, and it is, as I said, it's a powerful place, but
do bald men, their hair grows back when they get to the top?
Oh, I'm going.
All right, let's go.
You start in Turkey, it might happen for you. That's where everybody gets their hair back.
Yeah, it just pops up someplace else.
But I love that, because I think that, so often we're confused about the Old Testament. We don't really understand the significance. And there's this thread that goes all throughout the Bible, this mountain, this moment. So Elijah goes back there. Moses is obviously there. And then 3 disciples, Jesus, and this transfiguration moment, for those listening that don't know. And then God said, this is my son, hear him. So like all these characters, you think on a portal on top of perhaps Mount Sinai.
Yeah, possibly. From a Trinitarian perspective, Trinitarian theology, as it says in John, no man has seen God.
Right.
No man has seen God the Father. But then it says, God, the only begotten God, i.e. God the Son, who is at the Father's bosom, as I'm quoting King James, hath revealed him. So the role of the Son within the Godhead is to reveal, because God the Father, it would burn our eyeballs out if we saw him, right? But Moses is talking to somebody face to face. But even then, Jesus' face is glowing. It's almost as though the container of flesh cannot quite contain the radiant, glowing glory of God. Like the mask or the veil is almost being taken off. So no, Moses was not talking to God the Father. He was talking to God the Son. So, we know that that's the case. Was it a wormhole? Was it outside of time? Again, we cannot prove it. It's speculative. But again, if you throw that into a ring of theologians, I think it actually, as I said, I think it passes the test of like, that's possible. It's not some crazy out there concept.
Well, Joel, for evidentiary reasons, what else? So you go out there, you're going again, and you said in October you've been there multiple times. What else are you finding at the mountain or on the way to the mountain that also reinforces for you your case that this is the actual location of Sinai? All
right, so go to the pictures of the cows. So these are, again, the petroglyphs. As I said, this is about 300 yards from Moses' altar. There's about a dozen or so of these cows, and then there's a few smaller murals. Now, these are petroglyphs, which is to say you've got the lighter rock underneath. You've got this darker microbial thing that's called desert varnish that happens over time. Then they chisel through the varnish to the lighter rock. Okay, so your paintbrush is a rock. So they're always very primitive, is the point, So now look at this one. See the little guy holding the tail back there?
Yeah.
Easy to miss some of the finer details. Now keep moving forward. All right, this is a picture from the tomb of Pharaoh Seti in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. This is Egyptian religious iconography. So for those who are listening, you've got a picture of a cow. Go to the next slide, shows it better. And you've got all these people. This is, again, religious iconography from Egypt. The person underneath, it looks like he's bench pressing the cow or overhead pressing the cow. Now go to the next slide.
Oh.
A perfect representation of, because the critics say, oh, these are just farming scenes. These are just farmers. This has nothing to do with religion. I go, no, that's not a farmer. That's a very specific image that matches exactly what we see in religious iconography. So is this particular mural portraying the biblical golden calf catastrophe, which is there was a party, if you will. There was an orgy is really the word. The word party has sexual connotations. It was a religious pagan celebration with the cows, and the celebration was something that they commonly did in Egypt. You later see it in Greece and Crete. Eventually, this is actually where we get cowboy rodeos today. I'm just kidding. Go down.
Well played, sir. No, but so people are listening. There's the pictograph on the wall. This carving on the wall is the exact same imagery as what we just saw in the tombs in Egypt. So there's a man, a smaller person underneath a big cow with its hands underneath its belly. Kind of looks like it's holding it up.
Yep.
But the same. It's the same. It looks the same. It's much cruder on the rock, but you have like this like for like. You have the same imagery.
A bunch of other stuff around.
It's just another amazing coincidence. Now keep feeding through the slides. Go down. Now see, he's holding the tail. That was the same thing you see in the Egyptian iconography. And then keep going. Okay, so this is Eli Shukran, as I said, one of Israel's most legendary he's one of the most leading biblical archaeologists in the world.
Yeah.
And he got all excited when he saw this. He said, that is a Hebrew aleph, an ancient Hebrew, basically an A. And the original early Hebrew aleph, it's like a cow or bull's head. So go to the next slide. I've got there's a chart. You can see up there at the very top. Yeah. And that cow's head eventually becomes our modern A. Go to the next slide.
Wow.
Yep. You can see again, and here's, again, a renowned, this is not me making the claim. And he's like, that is a Hebrew aleph.
And where is this, Joel? Like, is this on the mountain? Is this on the way to the mountain? Where is this? Are these carvings?
It's all within a few hundred yards of the base of the mountain. Okay. So from Moses' altar to this, it's about 300-400 yards. Let's see.
So what you're saying is that this Israeli archaeologist is saying what we have here in Arabia at the base of this mountain are Hebrew letters and iconography that looks the same as we would have seen in Egypt, which of course, connecting the dots just says that we just had a people group that came out of Egypt, and knows these ceremonies,
cow imagery,
knows these pictures, and knows these rituals. Really, because what was happening was a ritual, right? So, and they're recording the same thing that we see in Seti's tomb.
Now, this one's go down to the picture just below the one that I'm in. This is a picture of the entire mural. Now, again, the critics say these are just farmers.
Right.
I did notice this, again, these kind of crude pictures. Every single one of the humanoids in this have erections. Okay?
Oh boy, here we go.
Not farmers. But the point is, that's exactly what's that?
The orgy.
Yeah, the Bible, it says they ate and drank. So the elders on top of the plateau, they ate and drank and they saw God. The golden calf idolaters, it says they ate and drank and they rose up to play. And that word play has sexual, it's like a pagan orgy. So I go, it's portraying, once again, exactly what the Bible conveys. And then go down to this next picture.
6 to midnight.
6 to midnight out there.
They're dancing. Yeah. So it says when Moses came down and he saw the dancing, he smashed the tablets. And I mean, I don't know. To me, it looks like dancing, a bunch of people dancing. So, the critics can say, well, yeah, it does look like dancing. Yes, that's not just farmers. Yes, it does look like it's just coincidence. But at what point do the coincidences stack up so much so that you're now becoming foolish?
You're building a very strong circumstantial case. There's too much circumstance for this to be.
So to back it up from the beginning, you've got cave drawings of giants, and you've got the arrows, the battle. You roll in, you've got the altar at the base, which is, with the pillars, and you've got the two-tiered mountain that you would have needed to have the mid-section where they had the banquet, and then they continue up. They have the cave there, and then they have the calf imagery that goes back to Hebrew writing, and then you have this evidence of this orgy that's also talked about. And does this cow imagery have anything to do with the golden calf? Or okay.
Yeah. So it would have, been in that area. And interestingly, too, in terms of the shape of the mountain, because Moses comes down the mountain and Joshua meets him, and they go, we can hear something in the camp. They go, it doesn't sound like the sound of victory or defeat. It sounds like they're singing, but they can't see him. So you go, how is it that Moses comes down the mountain, but he can't see them? He can hear him, but he can't see him because he was in the bowl. He was in that plateau. So again, the topography matches the biblical description. There's another picture of the dancers. And by the way, when you see these petroglyphs, when you see that people with their hands up, they seem to have a dongle. They seem to be males. When you see the figures with their hands down, they don't. But I looked at this and I was like, wait, are these guitars? Are the what? Like their hands are not on the guitars.
Looks like a sword.
You got two people with swords going through them.
Oh.
And they're the same figures that you see that were dancing, And so I go, is this portraying the killing, the piercing? And so I put in the shish kebab. Are these human shish kebabs?
Yeah.
And it kind of has that appearance. Let me see what I have.
And the picture's blurry. Perfect.
Yeah, blurry shish kebabs. Okay, go back up to that right there. The
Our
picture
audio listeners
right there.
are like, what is happening?
So what other evidence? Is there a cemetery where they buried the 3,000 people that they killed? There's a massive cemetery. It's about 5 miles. It's a few miles from the mountain. But here's the thing. There's a Japanese team of archaeologists that just started excavating it. So this has never been excavated. Wow. The locals call it the cemetery of the Yehudis. So the locals are like, yeah, this is a Jewish cemetery. They're just beginning to excavate it for the first time, and they're just going down an inch per. And each one of these are like family graveyards, and there's dozens upon dozens of them throughout this massive field. I'm not an archaeologist, but it seems to me a cemetery is an archaeologist's gold mine.
Yeah.
So we'll see what this produces over the next couple of years.
For the biblical narrative, if you're new to reading the Bible or exploring the claims of the Bible, or if you're not familiar with the Old Testament, nation of Israel is led out of bondage and slavery from Egypt. They are led through the Red Sea, which we believe crosses the Gulf of Aqaba. Several-day journey to the foot of this big mountain. God reveals himself. He invites Moses and the 70 elders up onto the mountain. He shares the terms of his covenant. Meanwhile, the people are down below in the valley, and they're like, where's this Moses guy? He's been gone for a long time. They start to party. They sculpt a golden calf. In the Bible, it says that they named the calf Yahweh, the name ascribed to the God of the Bible that delivered them. But because of their 400 years of slavery and captivity, they ascribe savior powers to an idol. And then they start to party. Joshua and Moses hear this. He's like, you better go down and straighten out your boys. They've gone, the wheels are getting really wobbly. The wheels are falling off. Moses comes down in a fit of rage, breaks the tablets, and then he says, who's on the Lord's side? There are a group of Levites that say, we're on your side. They go throughout the camp, killing people that were partying and worshiping this golden calf. It sounds brutal and savage, but God's holiness is not to be something to be trifled with. And that's what results in the death of 3,000 people at the base of Mount Sinai, which is what in these petroglyphs we're seeing potentially represented.
Well, this is this is amazing because I'm just like the picture of Mount Sinai you've painted for us and our listeners today, and the historical accuracy. Antichrist guy is the golden calf, the Antichrist.
Oh, is that a picture of the Antichrist?
Yeah,
that's a good,
because this linear time and circle is that representing the future too. We'll all worship this golden version of a true sacrifice, but it's not the real one.
I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
I would say this though: the primary Antichrist figure in the story is Pharaoh. Pharaoh is actually the original Antichrist figure. Later, it's Antiochus Epiphanes. Also, Goliath is a huge one. Sisera.
Huge one.
Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, did you catch that?
As a giant joke. See that?
That was good. That was subtle and good. I like it.
The Second Samuel, First and Second Samuel actually is filled with snake motifs and imagery.
Yeah.
Which the snake.
There are many antichrists, basically.
Yeah, many historical antichrists that are pointing to the ultimate one.
No, but one thing interesting about this iconography too is that we've talked a little bit on the show about the idea that it probably wasn't a calf; it was a bull. And this is bull imagery, right? Like the idea of a calf is not a great translation. And then you have the bull.
Borat voice, strong like bull.
The bulls represent strength. That's how they're the ones that plow the earth and all that type of stuff.
Strong and plow
through which we get life and food.
But it also was the imagery of El, like in the Canaanite religion, was a bull. Like so, you have the father of Baal. And this Cana, they represented their god as a bull.
It just seems like that circle language. Like if the Transfiguration happened there, and like some sort of portal, it's some sort of like the future, the past, and the present all happening at the same time. You would think that there's more to this mountain that might foreshadow things to come. That's just what it seems like is happening there.
What about the split rock? That's the other thing I wanted to get to because everyone's seen this picture. In Saudi. I've seen it 100 times, but there's this rock that looks like it's split completely down the middle. And so that part of the story, for folks that aren't as familiar with Exodus, is that
the old split rock.
The people need water, right? And Moses, in a fit of rage, instead of...
Oh, that's a different one.
No, this is not the same rock.
Yeah, there's two. There's one at the beginning of the Exodus and one at the end.
Edit that out, Dan. I don't want to sound too dumb. All right, go ahead.
No, it's actually Michael Heiser made the same mistake, so you're in good company.
Right. Leave it in. Me and Mike.
In this picture, you can see me down at the base just for size. The rock itself, just the rock, is 6 stories. It's about 65, 70 feet, 20 plus meters tall. Okay. That's me just estimating when people go up there and doing the, here's a person that's about 6 feet and then doing it. It's in that range about 6.
Massive split rock. How close is this to Sinai?
So it's in the right location, which is close to. It's just on the northern side. And it matches the biblical descriptions because the Lord says to Moses, he says, Moses, go and strike the rock at Horeb. So Horeb is just an alternative name. Sinai, Horeb, it's the same region. So now imagine you're right here. And the Lord says, go strike the rock at Horeb. You're like, which one? Because there's like 95 gajillion rocks. So to me, that conveys that the rock at Horeb was a well-known landmark. It had to be. It had its own name. Like, you got to be pretty special to stick out here. And this rock, just like if you were to go to Arches National Park or something, it is a natural, phenomenal formation. And it says at the end of Isaiah 48 that, basically at the end, I don't know if I have the verses, it says, you bakah, you clave the rock, you split the rock, and the water gushed forth. So again, we're looking for a prominent landmark that's in the vicinity that is split from the top to the bottom, and it gushed forth. This is not, Beverly Hillbillies, out came some bubbling fruit or whatever. It's gushed forth. And then actually I've got a picture there when you climb up to the base. Yeah, go down right there. And to me, I'm not a geologist, but to me it looks like there's massive water erosion.
Look at that.
Now, there is a lot of similar formations in the area. So again, I want to be careful not to overhype it, but it does, to me, again, look like you could see it. I would love to get someone in there with a seismic shoot and see if there's a straw under it. There's so much to be done.
I think to your point though, right? If you practically, if you're going to hydrate 1 million people, that's a lot of water.
Yeah.
And so you would think you'd find water like erosion, like mass water erosion in a space where you have that much water. Because we're not talking about it's not us 4 having to drink water out of a rock. We're talking the nation of Israel.
That team of scientists they're getting done with the Great Pyramid of Khufu. They need to come over here, see if they can see a big water spout underneath that rock. Let's check it out.
Yeah, logistically, the Exodus was a nightmare. I mean, depending on how many people. And there's a broad range, by the way. Scholars debate. Some say there was as little as like several thousand people. Some say there was as many as 3 million. Somewhere in between there, it's a lot of people to eat, feed, all that kind of stuff. So the miracle. So what the Lord did at the beginning is he demonstrates his strength and his power. He rips the ocean in half. He drowns Pharaoh. He's doing all the, at the front end of trying to woo the woman, you're strutting. Later, you're saying, and I can provide for you too. He does all the quail and manna and water. And he's like, I'm not just he's wooing Israel away from the false gods of
then Israel was like, I'm tired of your cooking. I don't want to eat this manna anymore.
What? Yeah. And this might be just like an off the beaten path question, but what do you guys think Moses' staff represents here? Like that's like always been a blurry part of my thought. Like, why does he carrying this stick around? What is that? That sounds, someone would label that New Age, or
got a magical staff.
Yeah, he's got a magical staff with him this whole time. And what significance does that play in this story?
I'll share my pastoral perspective. If you think about, do you follow that handle on Instagram, like Stick Nation? Where people find these sticks.
No, I'm not big on sticks.
It's fantastic.
Stick Nation. People
welcome.
From all over the world
That's
find these
Stick
sticks
Nation.
that look like ray guns or wizard staffs or things, and they're like, look at this, and then they use their imagination to talk about what this stick could be used for, and it gets like it has thousands of likes and follows. So
the internet is undefeated.
I desperately want to infiltrate this community.
Okay. Well, this is your gateway right here.
Here it is.
Did you hear it? So think about a staff or a stick. What intrinsic powers does it have?
None.
Absolutely. Yeah, none at all. It's just a stick. You can find them on the ground anywhere. And my thought would be it's a beautiful picture of the God of the Bible desiring to partner with people to do extraordinary things that would be otherwise really, really ordinary, like a stick.
Right.
And
also a tool, right? Like
a tool
it's
in the
ordinary
hands.
and worthless unless you turn it into a tool, right? And
and there's one point where he says, Moses, take your staff, but after a certain point, it's then called the staff or the rod of God. It's been used by the Lord for a number of incredible things, and that staff then becomes transformed from something common, ordinary, simple, and basic into something used and extraordinary by the Lord.
But
the rod
only
of
because God decided to use something ordinary.
How about that?
It may have been a shepherd's staff too, right? 40 years he's a shepherd.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Ron Wyatt found it.
Probably. Oh yeah, he got it. There's a super cool little Jewish tradition. I'm not sure exactly where it comes from, but it says that Moses is standing there, and the first time he commanded the ocean to split, and it didn't split. And then Moses was like, God, what do I do? And the Lord said, what do you do to an unruly child? Moses said, discipline him. And he said, do likewise. So then he whacked it, and it split open. Whether that's true or not, but it's kind of a neat little story. Yeah. Discipline the ocean.
Well, I think one of the most, like the image burned in my mind is the old school 10 Commandments movie, standing there and he's got the staff in his hand, and it just seems like there's so much there. It turns into a snake at one point. He splits the rock with it.
Go back to this picture of the split rock. It's also Rephidim. So there's a massive plain right by this. Rephidim is where they fought the Amalekites. And in the story, Moses holds the staff up with both hands all night long. Hur and Aaron get under him and prop him up. So think about this. Moses, who is a prophetic prototype for Jesus, is the greater Moses. Biblically speaking, Moses speaks of a prophet greater than me that's coming. He clearly fulfills that. But here is the prototype. And the only time that Israel gains the victory is when he's basically in the form of his
crucifixion.
His ultimate type is of the cross, and they hold him up. Israel has the victory. So here's Moses all night. That's pretty powerful that his staff gets incorporated into that image.
It occurs to me, though, that when you have God's design, which is that in the Old Testament, he meets with Moses, he meets with his guy on a mountain, he meets with Elijah on a mountain. We see, I think in a lot of pagan religions and stuff, they also go to the mountains, the top of mountains, whether it be, Native Americans talking about this is a holy mountain, like Mount Shasta or wherever, or you have effigies, like Nate talked in the beginning about pyramids. You have this feels like a ripoff of now these lesser Elohim, as Mike would talk about these fallen angels that are in Deuteronomy 32 given the nations. They sort of do the same thing. They're like, well, you can come meet with me on this mountain. We were in Machu Picchu, and there was these shamans that were saying, like, I got to go up on that mountain to meet with like the god of this mountain, this area, and that's what they do. It's very.
And we did an episode with Dr. Joel Matamale that Eden was on a mountain as well, as he thinks as well. So
Eden was where?
Eden was on a mountain.
Oh, on a mountain,
yeah. So it's like the original.
But that doesn't seem. We talk about coincidental. That doesn't seem coincidental to me, or accidental either. That there's sort of this copying as the Kingdom of Darkness does of the way that God operates, and they're sort of doing the same thing. Like, I can do the same thing. Like, come meet with me on a mountain, whether it be Baal or the Egyptians in there, or whether it be the ziggurats of Sumer and Babylon. They're creating these mountain places where they go to meet with their gods
as a counterfeit. Yeah. So as we start to land the plane here, maybe if I could attempt to stitch together two interesting things that I'm seeing playing out of the course of our conversation. So you have Joel, who is such a dear friend of mine, who I look up to, who I respect the amount of time that he's put in to study these subjects and others, the role that he plays in the broader Christian community, and telling things like they are, the heat that he takes, but then also being able to introduce wonder. How many times has Joel today said he's putting forth physical evidence that he's seen? He's backed it up with the biblical narrative that anybody who has a Bible can open up and look at. And he just suggests, hey, what about this? And what it does for what I think it will do for the audience is it invites them to wonder. And for so long, I've been in pastoral ministry for over 20 years, and for so long, I feel like the church has left wonder at the door. We don't want to wonder about things. We don't want to use our imaginations. Like that's where you can get yourself off into the weeds, off into a ditch. And so we're going to leave imagination and wonder at the door. And I think that really your podcast is part of the point of the sword, inviting the Christian community to wonder again. And the things that are being stitched together are the world that doesn't go to church, the world that doesn't know about God, the world that doesn't read the Bible, but are big fans of your show. They have no problem with wonder. Right. You can say portal, you can say wormhole, you can say time travel, and they're like, yep, I'm with you. Yeah. But when you say those things in the Christian world, there has been such a reluctance, like people get tense and cringy. And one of the things that I love so much about you guys in this podcast is I like to think of the things that we've been talking about today, like one or two puzzle pieces on a big puzzle. And I know that analogy has been used here on this show before, but when you get a puzzle, it comes in the box, and in the box are all of the pieces. They're all jumbled up. And what's on the lid of the box?
Picture.
The picture, the finished image.
Yeah.
In a similar way, I believe that the kingdom of God is like a puzzle. When the box is opened up, the pieces are spilled out. Instead of a picture as a reference, we have a biblical narrative. And so imagine a plain cardboard box with all of the puzzle pieces, but then instead of a picture on the lid, it's like a 15-page booklet describing it. How much more challenging would that puzzle
the puzzles
be?
my dad gets. He's like, there's no picture. You just got to put it all together. Just we just read about what it looks like. And this is exactly what hey, Dad, you love these kind of puzzles. This is...
So that's that's what I see your role and all of our blurry friends is being able to look at the narrative description, look at the pieces here and say, these pieces, there's no extraneous pieces that come in the box. That would be awful. Yeah. And there's no missing pieces. That wouldn't be a good puzzle. The pieces all do fit together. And I think that you guys are doing an incredible job of flipping over the pieces, and what the church for generations has said, no, I don't know about those. Right. You know, giants.
They don't
and
fit.
The blurry
this doesn't
things,
fit. Yeah.
They don't fit, but they're in the box.
Right.
And I think you guys are doing a great job of flipping them over and saying, guys, this piece is in the box. And other friends of the blurry verse that come in and share things with you, they're able to be like, well, look at this piece. Wow, it fits really well with this piece and this piece. And so I think that for such a time as this, you guys are flipping over pieces and inviting the church to look at some of these pieces that have been pushed off to the side for a long time.
Thank you for
appreciate
that.
Yeah. And sometimes a piece you think will go fit with another piece and it doesn't. And I think you have to have the humility to go, it doesn't fit there. It fits over here. And I think you put together 15 great pieces or so of Mount Sinai. And here at Blurry Creatures, we're going to give you a new nickname. No more Antichrist guy, Sinai guy.
Sinai guy.
That's better.
Sir Sinai.
Sir Sinai.
Better.
But Joel, my last question for you. Thank you so much, Brian, by the way. It's kind, because sometimes doing this, you know, when you're trying to put these pieces together, you get a lot of hate mail. So it's good to get some...
you should try being the Antichrist guy.
Yeah, dude.
But if you remove the understanding of Mount Sinai from the Old Testament, what do you think that does? Are you trying to put this piece back into people's sort of biblical timeline? Because we say a lot of times on the show, if you take Genesis 6 out of the Old Testament, you're left with a lot of confusion, because you have these giant clans, you have this weird thing going on with tribes and nations, and why are they killing off this? And Christians took that out. But if you take Mount Sinai out, what happens, like, to your faith and like your understanding?
I mean, you lose everything. It is the foundation. Christians don't understand. Christians think the Bible starts out at the bottom and it slowly builds and ramps up to the New Testament, and then we get to Jesus, and that's the tall mountain. Like, if you're to diagram the Bible out, you got the massive mountain of creation. Obviously, that's huge. But the mountain of the Exodus and the theophany at Sinai is actually bigger. It has more prominence than creation itself. And then the Bible ramps up to the return of Jesus, which is the ultimate, final, far greater mountain. But that's the way, from a literary prophetic perspective, the Bible is written. You take away the foundation, it doesn't make any sense. Well, I'll just add this to close and kind of let my freak flag fly, so to speak. As I said, I'm not a huge woo-woo guy. My wife's very sensitive to the spirit. When my friend first told me, he invited me, he said, I can get you a visa, I can get you in. And I said, all right, let's do it. I tangibly felt a heavy, seriously dark presence. I was like, what in the world? Like, I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
And I've had several years since then of solid, unrelenting spiritual warfare that's pretty undeniable. I won't get into all the details, but I believe it was for a purpose. I believe that my role in all of this has had a purpose. I believe that the Lord had the kingdom closed. I believe that the Lord had this forgotten for a reason. I believe it's been preserved for a reason. I believe it's being highlighted at this moment for a reason. I believe that MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, that's changing laws, that this is all happening now for a reason. I believe it's in the heart of the Islamic world for a reason, because I believe that the Lord has a testimony with this mountain. Again, when the whole world looks and goes, okay, so you're telling me that there's solid, actual evidence, as we've just seen, pretty overwhelming evidence for some of the craziest, most foundational stuff in the Bible. which again, all of it is a prophetic prototype, a dress rehearsal for the far greater theophany at the end of the story. And the marriage supper, the betrothal supper that they ate on that mountain is then culminates on Mount Zion. The whole story, starts on Sinai and ends on Zion. I believe that the Lord has a prophetic testimony. And so I believe the warfare was very real. And I believe, and there was a certain time, actually, you guys had Tom Doyle on.
Yeah.
I took him the first time when we took a group. We came in, when they opened Saudi to tourism, we brought the first tour group in the history of the kingdom that were not Muslims, 25 Christians. We went to the mountain and we said, now you're talking about territorial principalities, and I don't understand how this works. Again, I'm not a woo guy. I felt like we were to all hold hands around the altar and say, Lord, we thank you. This is your mountain. We thank the kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the royal family that they're welcoming us in. And now we say, Lord, cause your face to shine on this kingdom. And it was like in that corporate prayer, I felt like something lifted that I'd been carrying for a few years of all the warfare. And I believe that the Lord is almost like reclaiming his mountain right now, if that makes sense.
Boom.
I love it. No, I think I was going to say,
amazing.
like, when you talk about like the scriptural importance of Sinai, I think the other side is now we have boots on the ground, a place to point to. There's more evidence for the validity for people that don't believe. It's like, Lee Strobel, Case for Christ. You have this evidence you can touch that correlates to a thing that most of non-believing or secular scholarly would say, oh, the Bible, we can't prove any of that, but here you can. And I to me, that'd be why the warfare exists, because now you got more to point to. It's not just the things that are in the Holy Land. Here's something, and here are all the markers that say this actually happened, and it happened here. Shoot, it's just the Word of God is inerrant to us who believe, but to a world that doesn't, it's going to be very hard to be like, okay, well then, this is all real places, real stuff, real happen, and we can point to a rock and to artwork and to pictograms and to altars and to places that correlate with all this stuff. And that, to me, is God. It's like he's allowing, as you say, I feel like he's allowing these things to happen because he's saying, yeah, I'm here and I was here.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are locked up in this cave, and then all of a sudden they just randomly, someone discovers them at this time. There's all these things being discovered right now, and I think sometimes I feel like the darkness tries to hide some of these things, and in a weird way, they preserve them. Yeah. And then it comes out, and then people believe again, and you have, like you said, this is in a heavy Muslim area. All of a sudden, boom, the mountain of God comes out. What's that going to do? It's going to change their faith. They're going to go, oh, wait, I got it wrong. And this thing that was supposed to be hidden is actually the thing that because we don't want people to believe in the true biblical story, we flip that puzzle piece over at a certain point in time, and boom, it hits harder.
I love imagination and wonder. I was born in 1974, so I grew up in the 80s, and there were so many incredible 80s movies about wonder and imagination. You have Star Wars, you have Never Ending Story. Like, come on, with
Goonies.
Falkor, the Luck Dragon, know?
Yeah.
And so I love being able to not just wonder, but I like to connect wonder and reality.
Yeah.
And I was reading a verse in Psalms a couple of years ago where it says that God led Israel by a path through the Red Sea, which they didn't know about. And when I read that, I said, man, from the grammar, it looks as if there was a path actually there that was covered by water. God knew about it, but Israel didn't. And so that ignited my wonder and imagination. And someday I would like to connect some reality to that sense of wonder and retrace the Exodus route.
Awesome.
Let's go.
On bicycles.
Yeah,
So,
we'd love to be part of that.
Yeah.
If that
You gonna ride a bike?
I'm gonna.
This
ride
dude
it.
climbed Huayna Picchu in jeans and Air Force Ones. I thought we were gonna lose my co-host on the. We're in Peru.
He made it through.
I had to go
skinny jeans, dude. Can you imagine
skinny
that?
jeans.
Going, that's a
yeah. Well, it kind of like acts like compression, for like top
I think it kept them together.
athletes.
Well, I was like, dude, I got to have the Marty McFly uniform all the way up to the top. It's on brand here, guys.
That's right.
I'm the same way, man. Everybody brings all this special like travel hiking gear, and I just wear what I wear every day. It's comfortable.
I love it. It's like the guy that ran the marathon in jeans. You see that guy recently?
Yeah.
Oh,
finished like second in his class. He ran it in jeans.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Like a lot of chafing. Doesn't sound amazing to me at all, actually.
So Joel and I, we get together. We cut up. We talk about life. We talk about real things. We encourage one another through hardships, and sometimes we dream together. And one of the dreams that we have concocted would be to take fat tire mountain bikes, start in Egypt, and that picture on the screen there, we don't have an overlay of the proposed route, but how cool would it be to, I don't want to like walk or run. I've already run across one country and that was enough, but to be able to ride a bike, retracing the route of the Exodus to just see. Just connect some dots and allow your imagination to become saturated with the story of the Exodus and come through, leave Egypt, through the Sinai Peninsula, dodging ISIS caravans, crossing the Red Sea. We've got a friend that's like, oh, you guys want to like snorkel or scuba and look for sunken chariot wheels? Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Hey, Lubin, you for scuba?
You for scuba?
You for scuba, Lubin? And then cross Mount Sinai, continue through the country of Jordan, and then cross the Jordan River into Israel. How great would that be?
The Trinity Triathlon. Guys are putting together.
Hashtag trademark.
Okay, yeah.
I do want to.
Yeah, you got
present.
A can
I've got a present for you guys.
You read your Hebrew Huffy all the way to
my Hebrew Huffy all the way through. So I was a big
Red Sea Red Line.
I was a big fan of this. Man, these guys they keep coming. So I was a big fan of this. I know that you guys are too, and I ordered this special. Maybe we can wind down things with
Moses
with
Mongoose.
This.
Yeah, there we go.
But no kid having a good conversation in the 80s
we go.
wouldn't be complete without some big league chew.
Look at that.
And so, yeah, guys, we can get into this.
Actually do it?
Oh yeah, get into it, fellas.
Oh, it's got a 26 day. It's not like the original.
So we got
get a chaw. Get a chaw.
So those listening, Brian got us brought a can in, an old school can, Folgers can, like.
Oh yeah.
And packs of Big League Chew.
Remember that?
Little League, bro.
Dude, you know what's funny, guys?
And the grape was the best flavor.
If you saved any candy from the 80s, worth far more than any baseball card you ever had.
And then I have one more
about.
thing that can maybe be an addition to the. Oh, I always like to come with gifts. How is it?
Joel's eating the whole pack. For those not watching.
You get a big chaw of that?
I'm going right back to 6th grade.
Look at that shirt.
What, this?
What? Hey, if you're listening, Brian's got a shirt of Bigfoot and
he's like grandma.
That's Dr. Laura.
And Dr. Laura.
She's baptizing Sasquatch.
Oh my gosh. Incredible. Laura Sanger, you're immortalized on Brian's.
You guys are guys are a combo.
So there's a little T-shirt of Dr. Laura baptizing Sasquatch. I feel like of all of our blurry friends, she would be like the most qualified, and so she's actually coming to speak at our church in May, and so she just lives in Salt Lake.
She was just here a few weeks ago.
Coming around. So. Oh, amazing! So here's the last thing. And this is great to bring out around. Maybe you're like at one of the Costa Rica retreats, or you're just having a blurry campfire. One of you slips off. The kids are around the campfire, and this is guaranteed to like have them not sleep for a week. But this is my very special Yeti call. Okay, and so you'll get a lot out of this. But it's right here.
Oh my!
I'm gonna moisten my fingers here, and it has a better effect if you close your eyes.
Okay.
So just picture you're 12 years old around a campfire, and your uncle slips off, and he's like making that noise.
Yes.
what? And the kids are saying, what is that? What is that? But I've just got this little leather thong here. It's a Sasquatch call. And
Sasquatch got some GI issues.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, he is notorious for having IBS, but I thought I'd leave this with you guys as a present. You can take it with you. And
the real Sasquatch call.
Maybe on top of Machu Picchu, or when you go to maybe Serpent Mound in Israel, you give a Sasquatch call.
We'll call him in.
And you call him in.
You never know.
We got to get Laura there to baptize.
Don't take that to Mount Shasta and pull that string. You might be afraid of what happens. Some things will come out of the bushes. Man, guys, I appreciate you both, and thank you for making this a lively, blurry event and bringing it full circle. And just like maybe the Transfiguration was a big full circle. We don't know, but I think we hit the ground running here, and we don't have a belief problem here. We're just trying to flip those puzzles and trying to make sense of how can we make sense of the things that have gone past the traditional explanation, and we believe there's an actual mountain here. And I think a lot of modern Christians have put this stuff in the category of myth and allegory. And there's actually data. There's actually like stones you can touch. There's mountains you can climb. There's things you can see. And that is a big part of the skeptic that we speak to on our show. We do that a lot. But then we go way far beyond that, and you guys didn't fail to deliver today. So, Joel, tell our listeners where they can get your books, and then Brian, where they can come to your church and hang out with you and maybe bike across, get chased by some Taliban.
Bedouins.
I don't know what's going on.
I did too much Big League Chew.
I'm good too. I remember why I used to eat it, actually. It's so good. I just want to eat it.
Yeah. So, my website is joelstrumpet.com. Take groups to Saudi and so forth. All my information is there, joelstrumpet.com. And, thank you guys so much for having me on. The whole thing was just kind of, I just made a video one day being silly. Mm-hmm. And threw it out there, and then everyone's like, you should go on. I was like, I had never even considered it. This was tremendous fun, and I really appreciate the invite. So.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so
we had
much.
all our fans yelling at us, was Joel coming on? Get him on.
Get Joel. I have different socials, but who cares about those?
Find you in the comments of the sticks.
Yeah.
Just
come to Jackson Hole, ask around for Brian Hunter. I'll either be skiing or climbing in the mountains or at church. So let's go to church together. Let's go climb a mountain together.
Not at the $1 Million Cowboy Bar.
But the
thanks, guys.
The church's tribe.
You can find me there too.
Yeah, I like that.
Tribe church.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it so much. Maybe there's a blurry trip in the future here. I'm sure we'll have some lunch here and talk about all the weird ideas that coming out of this episode. But thank you guys so much, and we'll have to do it again. So
woohoo!
Thanks so much.
Boys.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Big League Chew is so good.